Hi, so if you're watching this right now, you're catching this after the fact. You probably missed the live show, but just to give you an announcement, we're going to be switching our times for the live show from instead of 9 o'clock, we're going to do Sunday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern. Oh, and here comes our first people. Hi, Lois Ann, how are you? I'm also going to see if I can get this loaded on my computer. I'm doing this strictly through my cell phone for better connections than what I had using my internet because my internet's so slow. But so we're using the cell phone data and seeing how much we use with this. But I wonder if I could pull this up on my computer at the same time so I could get the chat a little easier. I think I might be able to. So if you excuse me for a moment, I'm just going to pop out the live chat window. There we go. Okay. So we have the live chat window on my computer ready, although we're not going to use the internet. So hopefully this works better than it has the last couple times. Hi, Coco. How are you? So we do have 2 people. Yay! Made it to the earlier time. So yes, we're switching the times of the live show from 9 o'clock because I learned that Elderman Farms does their live show at 9 o'clock. So we're doing it at 8 o'clock Sunday nights. I can't really go any earlier because we start running into, chores around here. So I didn't do this last week because we got home pretty late on Sunday from the Homesteaders of America Conference. So yeah, thanks, Coco. So we have a little bit to go over with Homesteaders of America. We'll go through that. I have so many videos to put together. I did get one put together for the conference. It was more like a overview summary of the conference. So we'll go through that a little bit. And then we have a lot of videos coming out. I have another one from the conference I got to put together probably in the next day or so. That's a foraging video. So we have that. We got back on Sunday night. Oh, and hi, Discovery. Glad you could join us. So, and how are you? And you guys, I'll just ask you a quick question because this is using my Verizon connection rather than my internet connection. So I just want to throw out the question of how is the sound? How's the video? Is it working all right for you guys? Because if this works well, we are potentially going to change our Verizon plan so that we can have unlimited data. So we can just do this over the Verizon as our internet instead of our internet. Okay, so good. It's working. Thanks, Coco. So, yeah, so we had busy last couple of weeks. We went to the Homesteaders of America on, what was it, last week, Friday, and drove there. So that was about a 10-hour drive to Virginia, to Warrenton, Virginia for that. So we drove there on Friday. I had Friday off work, went to the conference all day Saturday, drove back Sunday. So that's why we did not try to do a live show last Sunday. And then Monday, I took the day off work so I could get my laundry done. But we ended up doing our fall culling of the chickens. So we ended up butchering 11 chickens and our 1 extra goose. So so we did that. We have a lot of videos to come around that. We didn't do an actual butchering video, but we did that last spring. So we'll connect some of those videos together if people want to see more detail on what's involved. So yeah, it's been pretty busy. Of course, I work full time, so it's been busy all week. And we have someone else who wants to say hi. Excuse me. Someone was just trying to climb in my lap. So we have a lot going on there. We had yesterday, Mike was at the market in the morning with his pasta, had another good day at our local market with his business. And while he did that, I went over to my parents' house. So I didn't do any videos yesterday, but I went visiting my parents across the state, mainly because my sisters and I went to go clean out my parents' garage so they can actually get cars in there. So to help a little with Michigan, weather and safety for them, because we do get a lot of ice up here, so that way it would be better for them. But so today we actually went foraging with Nobby for the last time of the season, so we'll have another video coming out there. So basically, I think I have footage for about 4 videos I need to work on this week. Yeah, Coco, the pasta business is taking off. In fact, we're still doing all semolina wheat pasta right now, so the Italian style extruded pasta. But Mike is now working on incorporating some egg noodles into this. So he's doing a wide noodle, egg noodle pasta, so pretty traditional long wide noodle. And then he actually did ask me to ask you guys if you had any shapes that you would be interested in seeing as egg noodles or things you like, so that he can incorporate that into some of his styles as well, because he can do up to like 21 different shapes or something. Coco, what do you say? Did he check out the Spelt? The Spelt company. He's in the next room. He said not yet. I know about it. It's just, we're not there yet. Not there yet, is he? He might join us for a few minutes here. He's right in the kitchen working on something right now. He's got a lot to do, so he's probably not going to join us for this, obviously, for this whole live stream. But because he's got some still stuff to wrap up with the pasta, and he's right now, I think, de-stemming grapes that we picked up at Bonamiga Farms, where we do our foraging. And he's planning on, what are you making, vinegar with that? Making vinegar. Yeah, he's making vinegar from these grapes that he picked up. So he's got that to get started and a bazillion things to do, because he also teaches, if you guys, for those of you who don't know, he also teaches culinary classes. So, and I think it's 8-week courses right now. So the first 8-week course is coming to an end, and he's having to grade some papers and stuff. And a lot of prep for the final and all that coming up. So he keeps himself busy besides these videos. So, but he did know about the Spelt company, but he has not looked into that yet. So he's been pretty busy since coming back. But I did want to kind of go over, did any of you guys make it to Homesteaders of America, to the conference? I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to see who's in here. We have 5 people in here, but I see 3 people chatting so far. So it was an amazing conference. So if you guys didn't go this year and have a chance to go next year, there is a lot going on. There were 3 stages with speakers running all day. So basically you had to pick which speakers you wanted to go see. There were demos going as well, and vendor booths all around the conference. I heard there was something like 1,500 people there this year, and it was just a one-day conference. And there were people from all over the place. I think the furthest places I noted were people from Alaska and people from Hawaii. There were others from, definitely a lot of people from Michigan there. A lot of us, Michiganians like to do road trips, I think. So the Pratts were there, which was kind of fun, and to say hi to them. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. The Pratts were there as, just like us. We were just seeing that. In fact, we won our tickets from the Pratts, which was nice because we weren't really originally planning on going, and I'm so glad we ended up going. There were, the speakers that we saw Doug and Stacy. We saw Esther Emery, and Doug and Stacy are hilarious. If you watch them, ever get a chance, they actually gave 2 talks. We saw the first one, which was more of a question and answer that they had going. And then after them, we had Esther Emery, who kind of gave a little bit about her background, her story, her mom's story. And she's a very good speaker as well. And she says that she doesn't go out and speak very often. What was my highlight? Well, we really were interested in mostly in Joel Salatin, and he was pretty much the keynote speaker. So they had him running in the middle of the day, giving his talk, and didn't have any other stages running at that time, so that everybody could see him. And of course, he is a very good speaker. If you ever get a chance, we want to go visit Polyface Farms at some point. Maybe make a vacation out of that road trip again. So I think he was probably one of the highlights. But another one that we really didn't know about going in was Daryl Patton. Daryl Patton is also known as the Southern Herbalist. So he has a web page, he has a YouTube page. He's a naturopathic doctor. And he's learned a lot of, foraging and everything. Excuse the background noises. He's learned a lot about foraging and everything and different uses of plants. Yeah, Daryl Patton, it has 2 R's in his name. If you look up the Southern Herbalist, you'll find him, Noel, or Coco Noel. So he... in the middle of the day, he took people on a foraging walk, and I have footage from that whole walk. That is probably going to be the next video I release. I got permission from him to record the entire walk, which it wasn't a very long forage. It was like a 40-minute forage or so. Yep, that's him, the Southern Herbalist. So he learned from one of the old-time herbalists and kind of natural healing people, just who learned from tradition out of the Appalachian Mountains. There's this guy that this 81-year-old guy who's been doing it his whole life, that he basically studied under, and then he's continued that. He has a book out on a lot of that information as well. Which I want to see if I could purchase. I think you could get it on his website. So that's kind of on my wish list right now. But he took us on a walk, and he just, led us from one place to another, just around, it was on a fairground. So just around the fairground on the edge of it, and just pointed out things like every few feet on, edible or different uses, medicinal uses, treatments. And not just the folklore side of it, but also he understands the reasoning, why things are work the way they work. What is in them, what is the biochemical basis, which for me, in a way, I want to know that as well, because I'm not a physician, but my day job, I work as a genetic counselor, so I work in medicine. And just knowing some of the reasoning why some of these plants work the way they work, some of the science behind it, really, I thought was interesting as well. So he went into some of that as we went, and I'm guessing, some people have less science background than others, but it was kind of nice because no matter what background you came from, it was very understandable. So he went through a lot there, and very quickly, because like I said, this was only like a half hour to 40-minute walk that we went on. So yeah, Coco Noel, if you watch my videos, you know that we do foraging, and I really just want to learn the whole reason why I kind of started the foraging thing is I want to learn what's already out there that's edible. So we started using our local guide once a month about to go on these foraging walks to learn what's out there already. This just takes it another notch and actually combines it to what I already do with, working in medicine a little bit. So that, it was definitely very interesting. I knew nothing about him going in, but he actually travels around giving talks and foraging, weekends and stuff and workshops. And he's mainly in the South, in the Appalachian Mountains. But he goes all the way up to Michigan. So he actually gives a talk, I guess, in Saugatuck every year. So I have to look up when that is, because that's definitely something I'll probably want to do next year. And thanks, Coco Noel. Yeah, I did do a whole video on Leaves of Three, because there's that whole there's that whole thing that says Leaves of Three, let it be. However, some of my favorite berries have leaves of three. So I did a whole video on that, showing the difference between like your dewberries, your black raspberries, your strawberries, and then try to avoid the poison ivy. And the differences between those plants. I have a whole video on that one. And that's something I grew up with. We picked raspberries at my parents' house. My parents lived in the middle of the woods. In fact, a picture I posted this week on Instagram is just the woods behind their house, just a picture of the trees and all the colors just behind their house. So if you follow me on Instagram, you see some of that. You also saw a picture of my two sisters and I. But yeah, so we do, it grew up with some of that foraging, some just basic stuff, mainly just, berries that we knew, raspberries primarily. But it's nice to be able to expand on that quite a bit. So I've learned a lot this summer. And those foraging videos, hi Mike. Those foraging videos actually came from, it was my birthday present. So my birthday was last May, and Mike gave me a full season of foraging for my birthday with Nabi. So that's actually kind of where that stemmed from. I mean, I could have done the Leaves of Three video for the most part before starting on that monthly forage with Nabi. But, yeah. So, I'm glad he enjoyed that one, Coco Noel. It's definitely, my mother was a Girl Scout leader and stuff, so we had some basics there. Are you going to join us?
Only for a moment.
For a moment. Okay, so here comes Mike as well if you have questions for him. But we just posted, just along that side, we just posted a video the other day on the pasta carbonara, which we actually filmed before we went down to Virginia. So we just didn't have time to edit it until we got back just the other day. So if you have questions for Mike, he's only here for a couple minutes. But you had a question for them about pasta.
The only question is, I started making some egg pastas, which have been on the planning for a while, but I finally got to doing that. And so the natural thing to make is like a pappardelle or a wide egg noodle. So I've produced that, and I've actually cut some that are short. They're about 1.5 inches long, and that's like a soup noodle, or sometimes it's like a dumpling noodle, German or Amish style. So those are pretty traditional for this part of our area. Not sure if anybody has any interest in other types of egg noodles, other shapes of egg noodles. I have a variety of things, and I'm not going to make everything in egg noodles, but and I have plans for what I think people want, but if there's things you like. Cavatappi is a great one. Somebody just asked about cavatappi yesterday. I don't have a cavatappi dye yet. It's on my short list because the supplier that I was working with in Italy doesn't have that one. I have found it along with some other ones that I really would like to have, like, what else do I have in? a gnocchi sardi, which is sort of like a small or it's a little shell shape, sort of between a gnocchi and a shell shape. And then I want to get a couple other ones. So anyways, that I may be able to get cavatappi soon. I think I have a general macaroni. I don't even know if I bought an elbow because elbows are so boring. I don't mind having it. I was actually cresta de gallo, which is like a coxcomb. That's one I'd like to get, and you can get that in 2 or 3 sizes. So it's a hook, but it has a little ripple on the top that looks like a crest. So I'd prefer to use things like that, and I also have a canestrini, which looks like a snail shell. So I like to use those in place of a standard macaroni because I think it's a little more adult and more fun. And I don't know, if I'm bored making them, I don't want to make them. Although if there's a tremendous outcry for it, I will do it. Spatzel I cannot do. Spatzel is too soft. I only do low moisture because I press it under pressure, and if it's too moist, it becomes a sticky, gooey mess, and it doesn't work. So no spatzel. I like making spatzel. I know how to make German, Swiss. There's 3 types of spatzel, and I know how to make, I think, all 3 of them. Austrian have their own. There's a section of Austria has their own spatzel, but it's a hand pressed machine. It's a little different. So
sauce catchers.
Yeah, cresta de gallo is pretty much a sauce catcher, and that's why I like them. I like things with ridges. Like almost everything I buy with the regate with ridges. I don't like the really smooth ones. I don't think it holds the sauce, and so I avoid that. Spaghetti's, of course, a smoother one. But
Coco Noel says she worked in a German Brauhaus.
That sounds like fun. I've eaten in many of them. I've never worked in one.
Although the funny thing is, you've worked in Italian restaurants. You're more German than Italian.
Way more German than Italian.
Yeah.
I've cooked German food, German nights and other things, and I know a decent amount about it. I wouldn't say I know everything about it, but I can pull off more than one good German dinner. So that works. Yeah.
Excuse
me. A couple
me.
things that I've been working on today. So we ended up, Cindy was saying we're out at Bonamigo Farm.
Yeah.
And so they have 3 or 4 types of grapes, and they have apples and Asian pears and a whole variety of fruit. At this point, most of it's minimally sprayed or left natural, sort of an older plot that they don't want to continue spraying. So there's still tons of fruit. It's not always commercially harvestable. They bring it to the farmer's market, but there's so much fruit just laying around and going to pretty much going to waste that's available. So I went in there because it's late season and got we got some apples and pears and such. And I don't have a cider press or a juice press at this point. At some point, given time and money, we'd like to do that. But we got some eating apples and pears, and then I got a bunch of grapes, and I was looking for red grapes, but they're in the wrong. I think we're in the wrong area for the red grapes. So I know they have like a Concord or a Niagara juicing grape, but I think that still gets commercially harvested. We have a lot of Welch's and such in the area. A couple different juice manufacturers that take thousands of gallons.
Yeah, Welch's is actually just a town over from us, so there's a ton of people growing grapes for Welch's around here.
So they have a lot of those sort of sweet, sticky juice grapes, or some of them are eating grapes, but even less of that. Most of it's juice, sort of like parts of upstate New York. And then we do have some wine grapes, so they also have some white eating grapes. They taste a lot like a white grape juice. I don't know the variety. And then they have some other old-time Italian wine grapes from
their Bonamigo farms.
Their parents brought them from Italy, and I think we were in the wrong area to get in those. So I was looking for a bunch of red wine grapes. The point being, I wanted to do some vinegar. So I didn't care how good quality they were. I wanted to find things that were actually a little bit overripe. And there goes the ladybug.
Yep. We are having a ladybug infestation just outside.
I brought a few in the house they were on the grapes.
Not that that's a bad thing. They eat aphids, but and I'm losing you.
So we're not making wine because wine's kind of a difficult task to make. It can definitely be done, but more often than not, it doesn't come out very good. I've made beer in the past, and been a little busy to do that recently. But making beer I find to be pretty easy and fairly, if you work clean, things work out pretty well. Wine has always been of the opinion that more often than not, you make something that's not particularly good, even if you think it's good. It's just my experience. So I've not really ventured into that. What I did do was get a bunch of white grapes primarily, and then I just picked the best of them off of the stems, leaving, and even if they're overripe or a little broken open, I kept them. I just got rid of some of the really bad ones in the stems, and I just threw them in a bucket tonight. I got a couple apples in here too that I think had a worm or something. I just threw them in. So I I barely sanitized the bucket. I just rinsed it out, and I have very, very little. I don't know if you can see that.
You might have to hold that.
Anyways, it's just a gallon or gallon and a half of mashed up grapes, and I literally just, if they weren't broken open from stemming, I just threw them in there and mashed them with a potato masher. Again, not very sanitary because the grapes are already inoculated with lots of yeast, and so I've got that in a fermenter. I'll let it sit there for a month or so. Probably leave it up here for a day or two to get going, then move it downstairs. And so we'll get
that reminds me, Coco Noel, stomp the grapes. Yes. We actually have an old video. Sorry, I cut you off there, but I just wanted to show you, throw this out there. We have an old video that we posted that we recorded 10 years ago in Trinidad that was at a cocoa plantation, and they used to dance the cocoa dance. So that completely reminded me of stumping the grapes and dancing the cocoa dance is basically what the women did.
We have a big winery here. We're 5 miles or 6 miles from St. Julian's, which is the largest Michigan winery and one of the oldest. They do a big grape harvest a few weeks ago, and they have a huge public grape stomping, although they don't use it to make wine. I guess they just throw it out. I don't know. But they have a huge vat that they stomp.
Well, I think you would have trouble getting it past the government nowadays because everything's so
you could probably use it for a private stock, but yeah. So anyways, I have these grapes. I'm just going to ferment them for a few weeks, turn them to a crude, very bad wine. Well, my understanding always is the worse the wine, frequently the better the vinegar. So once I'm done with that, I'll take the top off. I'll probably strain out the juices or press them a little bit, just do a cheesecloth. And then I have vinegar mother from red wine vinegar, from my friend and Chef Alberto that I worked with for quite a while. His father is Italian and been making wine. I've never had the wine. And vinegar, and I've had his vinegar, which is quite good. So I was gifted some mother a few years ago, and I will inoculate it with this mother. Although the mothers are pretty much all the same. It will self-inoculate. It probably won't change it. But then I'll let it sit for another couple of weeks with oxygen on it, and hopefully I will get a white wine with a couple of apples and whatever else into a basic vinegar. So
it's a science, isn't it?
It's a science, but it pretty much does itself, especially the vinegar. It's really easy to get your wine inoculated poorly and turn it to vinegar. So I'm not too worried. I haven't done this exact process with grapes, but I'm not too worried about it. Yeah. And if not, it really didn't take much time or cost much of anything. So if it works better, I'll go in next year and I'll get buckets and buckets of this. And I'd love to find an apple press and press a bunch of juice, because cider vinegar is the same deal. Yeah. A little less sugar, so it might not get quite as strong. But I really like pressed apple cider vinegar, so yeah, we might make that too.
And if we could get ourselves enough apples here, we could actually make some that we could use for the chicken waters instead of buying it for the chicken waters. But us first.
Yeah, I don't want to put the good cider into the chicken water. It doesn't make any sense.
No. Get the good stuff to us first, and then if we have extra. But yeah, so many projects. What else was it you were talking about? Coco Noel's been typing away. So rose hip wine. We actually picked some wild rose hips today on our foraging.
Small, very small ones. Wild ones that would have taken thousands. They're a little bit past prime. Yeah. Well, we found some that were near the road that were very sweet. Yeah. And hadn't dried out. It's been so dry, and then we got 8.5 inches of rain last weekend, and we're due for some rain tonight. Yeah. So yeah.
Have an antique apple orchard for sale near us. They have vintage presses.
We have a bunch of presses, large presses. We have a bunch of farms around here that press. I know years ago I used to go to a farm in Pennsylvania when I lived there, and you could bring your apples and they would press them for you.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm guessing at this point, because we've had more issues with contamination and more regulation, I bet you there's no way in the world they'll let you bring apples from sort of unknown your local trees or whatever and press them. We used to do it as a fundraiser. So, but there are lots of people around here that press apples. We're right in the fruit belt. So I could definitely find pressed cider. Trick is to get enough of it cheap enough. Or in this case, I have access very inexpensively to a large amount of apples and ground fall apples from this one orchard. I know they don't spray much, so and I know that the best cider comes from semi-breaking down apples and a couple bugs and a little bit of dirt. Usually makes the best cider. And it's even better because once you ferment it, it's even safer. And then when you turn it to vinegar, the safety level on it's so high. I have no concern about that. And using that ground fall apple is really ideal.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'm going to take us back while we have you here for a second, but is there anything that stood out to you at the Great the Great American Farm Tour? Because I was noticing our T-shirts. We both wore the same T-shirt, but we didn't plan it.
I've never worn this before. I just found
neither
it,
have I.
I just found it actually it's left in the suitcase from the weekend. I didn't wear it.
Yeah. Anyway, from the Homesteaders of America Conference, was there anything in particular that you liked and stood out to you that time? I kind of went over Daryl Patton a lot, but anything that you liked a lot? Any speakers or?
Yeah, Daryl Patton, we didn't really know much about him. He was by far one of the best. He was really knowledgeable. It was small groups. In fact, a lot of people weren't very familiar with him. So he was easy to... He was really easy to work with, and he's been doing it for so many years. It was very natural for him.
Yeah.
So that was good. And the big draw was Joel Salatin, like I heard you say.
Yeah.
I've been watching him for years. I read or listened to Omnivore's Dilemma on audio, I don't know how many years ago, over 10 years ago.
And that's written by...
Michael Pollan, but they spent a lot of time with Joel Salatin in that book. And then Michael Pollan and Joel Salatin have paired up on a variety of projects and interviews. So I'm really familiar with a lot of their work. So Joel Salatin was really good. Kind of his classic self, although I thought he did 10 points on why you should homestead. So it was sort of this classic, everybody knows he's a classic old school farmer, and if he isn't preaching food, he might have been preaching religion. But so he's kind of that very traditional and put up a very traditional talk. And it was good, it was solid, but it wasn't like on fire. Sometimes I've seen some videos where he's in the dining room and he's just nuts, or he's out cutting wood and just going nuts on the government and regulation about how he can't cut a tree on his property. He was more like preaching to the people that already knew him. Right. So he was like, well, why are we here? Why are we in the middle of a little town in West or Virginia? And let's talk about homesteading and why it makes sense. And sort of reiterating or just reinforcing
why people are going into
why
it.
people do it, why it makes sense, why it will always make sense. And so that was really good. It was solid. I didn't think it was groundbreaking, but it was definitely, it's such a rare chance to get FaceTime with him. There was probably under 1,000 people under the tent. There was probably more like 500 or 600. It's hard to get that close when you've got him on TV and other things. He just doesn't do that much public speaking in that type of format. Where general public can get in there, so that was pretty exciting.
And there was standing room around the area. I mean, it wasn't a tent; it was like a pavilion with seats underneath and a stage in front, and it was open all the way around it. So there definitely were people in standing room areas. So whoever could watch,
everybody wanted to be there. I think they said they sold 1,500 tickets, but I don't know. I didn't feel like there was many more than 500 at any one
Well,
point, but there was people spread out all over.
They were so spread out,
Yeah.
it's hard to tell.
So there might have been 1,000, but it was under 1,000, and we had.
Plus, they're counting kids.
Yeah, and you could get seats under the pavilion. So it was a fairly intimate event. So that was really good.
Yeah.
I think that was. But Patton was sort of surprised. Didn't know much about him, and he really was good.
Yeah.
Esther Emery was the other surprise. I knew who she was. I knew a little bit. I'd seen a couple of their videos and other things.
She's very popular on YouTube, on her videos.
But she, her delivery and her execution on her talk was extremely good. Her content, she was very polished, and it just was very natural for her. But the content was very well thought out. In fact, I was thinking, she was one step off from they could have just shot a TED Talk and recorded it pretty much. It was really very polished, and she did it just off the cuff. So we learned more about what she does, and not knowing a lot about her background, two things that really surprised me is that she grew up more or less in an apartment without farms or canning or even a garden, that things were so her mother had really come from so far from where she was popular and on TV and everything going on. And that surprised me that she really didn't grow up with any homesteading. And then she went out and did theater stuff in big cities and traveled and wasn't involved or rejected any of that. And that when she came back, that she kind of started rediscovering it. And so she was really talking about rediscovering somewhat value, but mostly purpose, sort of purpose in life and purpose for interactions, and that all of her time in big cities sort of was totally detached, and there was no rhyme or reason or purpose or connection, and that it just kind of out there.
Yeah. And
that their time homesteading, of course, going out to the middle of nowhere and building a yurt. And she wrote a book that I had heard about a long time ago. A while ago, she went off the internet for a year and wrote a book about being off the internet, which led her to sort of this rediscovery of her mother and her mother's book, and it all made sense.
And just to let you know, for those who don't know Esther Emery, because Coco Noel says she's not really familiar with her, she does have a YouTube channel with her husband and family. They're completely off-grid out in Idaho. It's called Fouch-O-Matic or Fouch Family Homestead. They just changed their name, but if you look up either one, you would find it's F as in Frank, O-U-C-H is their, I think, her husband's last name. Yeah, Fouch-O-Matic. So they have their own. They haven't posted a video recently because she said they've been so busy. Doug and Stacy just did an interview with them at the conference, so they've posted on them. And Esther Emery's mother is Carla Emery. Let me grab the book.
Yeah,
I have it right here.
I think that's correct. So yeah, that was the one. I didn't know a lot about them, but just the content and the information that they presented. She actually had the original manuscript.
This is her mom's
in
book.
her hand that she brought with her while she was giving the talk.
There was a different book of her mom's, not this one, but this is the Encyclopedia of Country Living by Carla Emery. Her mom's first book was a whole bunch of recipes, like country recipes and things. But this is a monster of a book, but it has everything, like every topic, whole sections on goats and cows and chickens, and whole introduction to animals, gardening, all this stuff in this book on country living. That's her mom's book. So that is a big book discovery. And I have not read it cover to cover, although I have picked through areas as I'm, looking into things. So basically, her mom, I guess, died, I want to say about 13, 14 years ago or something like that.
Just a few years ago.
I want to say it was early 2000s.
Okay. Maybe you're right.
Esther's kind of gone back to what her mom used to own a lot of land out in Montana or Idaho or somewhere.
With a ranch with 300 or 400 acres.
Yeah, and lost all of it. And I think, I did hear later on Doug and Stacy's that her parents did go through a divorce. Okay. So lost all of it, had ended up in an apartment in the city when Esther was young, like 2-3 years old. So Esther did not grow up.
She was the youngest child out of 9 or something.
Seven, I think it was.
So.
But so she didn't grow up with it. The rest of her family did, and I've never heard any talk about the rest of her siblings or anything. So I know nothing about them. But she just recently decided to go back to living off grid completely and developing her own homestead and all of the stuff that her mom did. But she'd heard of different things that her mom talking about, but she didn't ever really have the personal experience until she recently did it. She didn't grow up with it. So a lot of people think she grew up with it. She's not. I'm sorry, I'm playing with the ladybug. But she did not grow up with all this, and she's kind of rediscovering it, which is kind of interesting. And she gave a very good talk. And she does have theater background, so I'm sure that was part of the reason why her talk was so good. But it's just her story too.
Yeah, and she really touched on kind of a lot of points that it doesn't work for everybody, but it made a lot of sense. So they ended up. She had the year off internet. They took property out in the middle of nowhere. They took 3 years to build a house, but during that time, their family existed completely off-grid in the middle of nowhere in a yurt that they had assembled. And now they've accomplished a lot more, but they're very primitive living. And she has some other books coming up and things that they're talking about. But that was pretty interesting. I guess the interesting part about her mother started writing this book when her mother went back to farming, started doing the old ways stuff that she'd grown up with. Yeah. And her mother realized at that point it was probably the end of the 60s into the 70s.
Yeah.
So a lot of
it was taking off.
A lot of hippie movement. The economy wasn't good. Politics weren't good. And people were going back to land. But it wasn't that far off. It was only 10, 20, 30 years that people had not been on the land.
Yeah.
So people were going back to kind of reconnect, and maybe the city wasn't working. And she realized that these people were coming on as professionals or whatever reason, and she's like, they're all going to die because they have no idea what they're doing out here. It's only been a few years, but they are completely lost. So she started writing recipes and writing down books and sort of little antidotes about country living, with the beginning of, oh my gosh, these people have to figure out how to exist if they're stuck out here. Yeah. And then it went from there. So. Yeah,
it was. And then she also kind of went over some of her own story on some of the mistakes that she made and all of that. And one of the common themes, which was it a book she was thinking about writing?
She's got a new book or new videos coming up soon.
But her common theme to a lot of her mistakes was all mistakes on water management. And so she kept coming back to the idea, water runs downhill. They live on a mountainside. And the problem with ice building up in bad places and her having like accidents on this ice, or can't get the gate open because the ice had built up because she cut it into the mountainside to level off the gate, and the ice built up there, and not being able to get in to feed her animals until she broke up all that hard ice. Just her whole theme was water runs downhill. Everything comes back to water run downhill. Problem here?
We don't have any hills.
We don't have any hills.
We have too much sand. All the water just runs through the sand. So we're fighting water all the time, but trying to keep it around for another few hours or days.
Yeah.
But we did have, so she was interesting. So these people coming back that her mother was kind of helping out or writing this book to, more or less.
Yeah.
Not knowing what to do. It turns out her own daughter then goes back, and they're with some good advice and some knowledge, but not much because she didn't live it. They're out in the middle of nowhere, and she's having to rediscover and relearn. And they had a lot of planning, building their house, but then they made a lot of mistakes too, and kind of just planning, using nature and using really, really simplistic things that basically 100 years ago everybody would have known.
Yeah.
And now in the 60s and 70s, and again now her in the 90s and 2000s and beyond, is she doesn't, she has to rediscover them. So that was in many ways kind of a highlight, and for a lot of people had come to see her.
Yeah.
And she's not on a speaking circuit particularly.
No, she says she doesn't really speak a lot.
Because of her family and everything else going on, and whatever other personal things. She rarely comes out to speak. In fact, they have limited their videos just because they're very busy. I guess they're building a huge workshop for her husband, and they hand dig everything. And
they just finished building their house.
Yeah.
So they just, they spent the last 3 years living in a yurt because they were building their house at that point. So, and he was doing almost all of it. She did a lot of recording of stuff and tried, helping out and stuff. But basically just these two people with their kids living off the land and trying to build the house at the same time. It's kind of cool. Buy any new gadgets or the butter turn. They did have butter turners.
The butter churn people were there. They had these fancy glass ones with the little gears on them. They look very nice. We don't have any dairy, so
we don't have cows or goats or sheep. We don't have any dairy animals, so that we have to purchase from other local farmers or nearby.
Our butter, be it regular or organic, usually comes from Costco.
Costco right now, yeah.
Unless I want to pay $7 or $8 a pound and get it from there's a local food co-op that has very nice butter, but it's almost $8 a pound.
Yeah.
And while I value it, we make choices, and many times $8 a pound butter is not our choice.
Yeah,
So,
you gotta get
I do buy good olive oil and buy some other things, but yeah, I would love, I love good fresh butter. And
yeah. Oh, we had joked about, and it's not happening any near time. But if we would get any other animals, what would they be? We're limited here though, because we have 5 acres. We are not zoned agricultural, so we're limited to the number of poultry we can have. We could have up to 30, and we are limited to the number of large agricultural animals. I think we could have 1 per 2 acres, so we could have 2.5. No, we could have 2. So I don't know if that ever come up here or not. We'll have to think about that. We might. I mean, we've been thinking about bees. That's one thing we've been thinking about.
I'd like to have bees. Yeah, we'd like to do that. A lot of things to do, but we'd like to have bees as soon as possible.
Yeah. Life Goes North says they've learned few things from them. Been watching their channel. Yeah, I've watched their channel some. I have trouble. There's just so many places to get information from, so I kind of watch here and there based on what they're talking about on different days. But I do like Life Goes North. Absolutely. I love watching your videos. I don't watch, like I said, never watch all of anyone's videos, but they're so relaxing. So I'll put a plug out there for Life Goes North, who's in the chat room right now. That I don't know. There's something about that Alaskan frontier and your videos that is just gorgeous out there.
We've never been to Alaska, but would love to. It's been on the list. I don't know when we'll ever get there, but
they're the ones who are asking you if you could ship pasta.
Technically, we could probably ship it. I have no idea what the cost factor on it is, and I know food's expensive in Alaska, but it might be a lot better to make your own. But we could investigate it. I just don't know if it's even close to worth it.
Yeah, it might break a bit. They tried to make, this is Life Goes North, tried to make apple scrap vinegar once, but it got bad bugs in it.
You got bugs, or you got weird fungus bugs in it?
Oh no. So, Coco Noel, yeah, you got to watch Life Goes North. They're awesome. So, yeah, I mean, if you mean insect bugs, or if you mean in medicine, bugs can mean something completely different. It can mean like bacteria bugs. So, but yeah, I don't know. We haven't tried, so we'll see how this turns out.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a real low cost thing.
It's an experiment.
Yeah, and it's a small amount on purpose if it goes bad. If I get bugs or gnats or something, because I have a bigger airspace than I'd like. I don't have a smaller fermenter. I just happen to have on hand some empty beer fermenters. If I don't get too many gnats or whatever, I'm going to assume as I get all the oxygen out of it over the next few days, they're going to die and they're going to fall in. And I don't really care. It's probably fine. It's just a little protein.
Yeah.
But if I get a weird, I may get a yeast bloom. That's normal.
Yeah.
We could get a really big, I could get a big yeast bloom growing on it, or I could get some other bacteria in it. I'm not too worried about that. One, I might let it go for a while, even if it gets stinky and doesn't smell sweet and yeasty, because probably the yeast will usually take over. secondarily, if I have a combination of a yeast and lactobacillus, which is what makes vinegar, they'll both work in their own time, and I'll get the yeast, and then the yeast will make the alcohol. The alcohol will be eaten by the lactobacillus, and I may, over time, it all filter out and maybe just fine. Because that's the typical problem with the gnats. It's protein. I'm honestly, as long as they're in my fermenter, they're gonna die quick. I'm not worried about that. So
you can strain them out.
That's when I gotta strain all their pulp out. So that's the beauty of fermenting to vinegar. It kind of does it by itself. Whereas when I'm doing beer, I sanitize everything super well, and I have my airlocks clean, and I'm really, really careful with it. So I don't know if you were open. I don't know if you were open fermenting. And if you had a big pile, you could easily get a lot of larvae and gnats, maggots, whatever, and then it gets a little nasty. But if you have an airlock, because the first step should take place ideally in an oxygen-free environment, so with a lid and with an airlock on it. So I got some airlocks here on these. And in that case, you're gonna get so much CO2. I think you're gonna kill off the larva pretty quick, and I'm just not too worried about it. So this is just a basic airlock on here.
And if you have like the small canning jars and doing fermented things, actually, Pratt Family Homestead has been. If you watch some of their fermented stuff, they do a lot of like cucumbers and stuff. They purchase, and they had them at a conference.
Oh, too. They're easy to find.
The lids, the mason jar airlock lid.
Yeah. Use them for small batch sauerkraut and kimchi and all that.
Yeah.
I might dump it if I had an insane amount. So you have a couple options with that. One option could be you could, you're gonna want to cover it at some point, but you could cook it. You could possibly cook it into an applesauce, and then you could chill it, and then you could reintroduce a little bit of fresh apple or some fresh brewer's yeast, and you could begin it fermenting from a sterilized source, and then salvage it that way. But you got to make sure you inoculate it with yeast. So, but if they get really buggy, that's kind of nasty.
Okay, Life Goes North says, Alaska is an amazing place. Hope you get here. And yes, I need pasta. Well, you also have to come to Michigan, which I told, I think on a comment we were going back and forth. You could come to Michigan one year, and we could go to Alaska another year, and we'll just go visit each other or something. I don't know. I'd love to make that trip someday. I love traveling. We've both, in college, we both did study abroad. We've, over our married time, we've gone to Trinidad and Tobago twice. We do mainly food trips, so food related. I tried
after college, I tried to go to Newfoundland. I was going to go on a cycling tour in Newfoundland. Unfortunately, time got short and money got short. I was going to see Cindy back and forth. We were dating.
We were always in different states when we were dating.
I think I was getting close to considering. I don't know if it was before. It was shortly before I decided to go towards the culinary route, and things changed. But I was going to do a 1 or 2 week cycling trip in Newfoundland.
That would be fun.
Because I was cycling all the time. I didn't have a car much of that time on purpose. I just rent one when I needed it. Yeah. Pre-zip car, but that was. And then, so looked at Newfoundland. We went as far north of Bay of St. Paul in Canada, about 3 hours north and a little east of Quebec. After going to a conference in Quebec, and we went dog sledding in March.
Conference was in Montreal.
I'm sorry.
And then we went north of Quebec. Yeah. And up to Bay St. Paul, and in March, there was about 8 feet of snow, 10 feet of snow base, and it was 3 meters,
35 degrees out, and the dogs were sweating like crazy, and we had to be careful because it was so hot.
I think it was a little above freezing. I think it was approaching 40.
Maybe, yeah.
But there's such a thick base that we went dog sledding, we went skiing, we were staying at a bed and breakfast that was kind of on this farm area.
It was a French inn. Yeah. Nobody spoke English except for one server.
And we don't speak French very well.
Although I can handle the menu all right.
We can handle food. And I took French in high school, but
So that was really cool because it was sort of that traditional inn in a small town. Their food was really good. It wasn't expensive. The dog sledding was amazing. The dogs are ridiculous. They're just absolutely wild. They're nothing like the dogs in your house. And you know. And,
they just want to run. They just want to go.
and they pee and poop everywhere. And if you're not ready, when they get ready to take off, they have so much energy. If
you get left behind.
You have to hang on for your life because they will take off and leave you. It's insane. So we had a guided tour for a 1 day.
That was a lot of fun.
And they did we stopped for lunch at a little hunting lodge that they stock with food and made a lunch. So that was pretty amazing. But that's as far north as we've gotten.
Yeah.
But we do like the cold weather and the outdoor stuff. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm a winter sports girl, so I definitely like winter stuff. Although I grew up indoor winter sports, figure skating. But yeah, I mean, life goes north. I mean, you're in Alaska and mushing territory. Have you guys ever done it? That would be so fun. If you ever do it, get a video if you can. That would be so awesome to see. Or if you go to, why am I blanking so far on the big race?
The Iditarod?
Yes, thank you. I was blanking on the Iditarod.
Yeah.
But oh my god, I would love to see that if you guys ever do that. But
and the dogs are rare because we love dogs. So the crazy thing about the dogs is because they are so not domesticated and they're not meant to be. They're work dogs and they love to work. And everybody's like, it's not good for the dogs. That's absolutely what the dogs do. If the dogs weren't running, they would have no interest in anything else. But they're crazy because they're a true, almost wild pack. They interact with people, of course. They have their houses, but they stand on top of their houses and they, you know, and it's like there's definitely a hierarchy and they howl. And I mean, it's like watching chickens and how chickens interact, but it's, we'd go to the Bronx Zoo. Actually, they have wild African dogs there. They do a lot of studies. And so we'd watch the wild African dogs because they're just insane. And these are not that crazy, but it was because these people probably had a couple hundred dogs between the young ones and they had some that were training and they would do mix.
They would mix the dogs, the young and the old, so that the old were actually kind of regulating the young and keeping them from just taking off too fast.
So it was serious business, and you know it wasn't. They weren't toys and they weren't pets, and you know they took care of them, but it's very different. It's like you know it was a farm. It was a dog farm, and so that was pretty amazing. To go out for a day with them. I think we'd do that again if we had the opportunity.
There's what we have to do. We have to go coordinate a trip to Alaska when the Iditarod's going on so we could go see.
That would be fun.
That would be so much fun. Okay, now I'm jealous of you, Life Goes North, because I want to go see that. Yeah. But there are people who do it around here, too, because in Michigan, I mean, when it gets really snowy, we could get a lot of snow.
As you move into the northern part of the UP, there are people that train dogs, and there are some
even just a few hours north of a few hours north of us here. We're in the lower part of Lower Peninsula, so a few hours north of here as well. But yeah, they have an Alaskan Malamute.
We had a Saint Bernard until last year. He was a monster. He was 230 pounds healthy weight when we lost him at. Just over 5 years.
He was almost 6, actually. He was
almost
a month shy of 6 years old. But actually, if we do we like our giant dogs. And I love your dog. Denali looks like such a sweet dog. Life Goes North. But if we get more dogs down the road, because we just lost our Great Dane a couple weeks ago, we'll stick with our giants. They are the heartbreak dogs a little bit if they die young, but we'll stick with our giants. We'll probably get another Saint Bernard.
Probably. There's a lot of dogs we like, but I'm kind of partial to Saint Bernards. I think it would be hard not to get a Saint Bernard, but the Danes are good. Yeah. We've talked about Newfoundlands. My parents had Newfoundland before I was born. We've talked about Newfoundland, Pyrenees. There's a lot of neat dogs, but we really like
Saint Bernard.
We like the big dogs, and but the cold weather dogs seem to work. We're moderately cool, and we have shade, so we can take care of them pretty well here.
Oh yeah, I moved into this from New York. We moved back to Michigan, and I moved in the middle of the winter, 2014. It was a cold winter. We were getting down to negative 15, and by the way, I was learning how to take care of chickens because they came with the house at negative 15 at night, which I'm guessing Life Goes North has gotten used to, but that's not normal for here. 0, but negative 15 was a little cold. Our St. Bernard was lounging out on our patio at like -5, -10, and he was just happy as could be, just lounging outside.
He literally would sit there 20 or 30 minutes on the patio in ice at -5, like anybody else was sunbathing, and he looked the happiest you've ever seen.
Yeah,
it was crazy. But his double coat was really thin and woolly. It was thick, and he was just happy. And
hope you honor Jello with the moondog pasta shape.
I have to figure out how to get a moon dog. There's some sort of moon shapes, but getting a moon dog pasta shape. So I use these brass dies that there's a company in New York, an old school company in New York that does custom ones.
Yeah.
And otherwise, they come from Italy, and they're even the normal ones that aren't custom are extremely expensive because they're brass die and they all have to be drilled or hollowed out, and then tested so that the pressures extrude in the right way to form the shapes. It's not just the shape, but actually the amount of dough that hits at different places and pressurizes it. Figuring that out would be possible. I can't imagine what I'd have to pay to get a custom die.
Yeah, Denali was 100 pounds. Our Dane was at ideal weight was about 125 pounds. He was a smaller Dane for a male especially, but he did get up to about 155, 160 because he was on prednisone for a while.
Yeah, he was steroided all last summer, and he puffed up his belly. He just filled up with water, and not so much muscle. He just got big.
Yeah, he lost muscle.
And he was eating everything we could feed him, and he was begging for treats like all night.
Steroids are not fun.
And he was only on heavy steroids for about 3 months before
we started cutting it back.
Yeah, we had to go to surgery because there was no way he was going to be able to survive healthily with the dose of steroids he was on.
Yeah. So, unfortunately he had bloat, which life goes north. I would suggest any owner who has a giant breed dog, large breed dog, learn the signs of bloat, because if you could catch it early, you can save the dog. If not, if you can't catch, you have to catch it within like the first hour or so. If not, then they don't make it, because that's what happened. Actually, both of our dogs had bloat at one time, but we caught it really early for our St. Bernard, but we didn't catch it early for our Dane. So, yeah. Life goes north, gets down to -30.
Yeah. I've been in -30 once or twice.
That's cold.
It's cold. That's really cold. That's when I had an old truck at that point in high school. We got -30. And I was concerned that starting it, I was going to crack the block. Because it was a 1950s truck, and it was in the 1990s. Never cracked the block. It actually fired right up.
We got pretty cold in the 90s, didn't we?
We had one year where we had a patch for a week or two where we got serious double-digit negative. And then like a few years ago, we had another... I guess it was that.
That was the year I moved in.
It was probably the last time that we got into multiple days of
double digit below
10
zero.
Below,
Yeah. Anyway, so I just wanted to let you guys know, because it's already 9 o'clock, and I know the Aldermans are starting. If anyone's going to go watch them, but what's coming up on videos this week? I have footage for 4 videos, I believe. I have two foraging videos. The one with Daryl Patton, I'm gonna edit it down and try to take, I think it was about a 40-minute video, a 40-minute walk that I'll cut it down to around 20 minutes and get the highlights of. So we'll get that out. I have one that might be funny. I haven't looked at the footage yet, so we'll see how it looks. But my dad and I were trying to get the catch which chickens were to be culled as we're opening the coop in the morning. So I kept opening one, catching one, and either tagging the young ones because they weren't tagged yet. I used tags for them. And I use the ones that were going to be culled, I was separating out in an area where it didn't have food. So some of them snuck out past me, and I had to go catch them on the run, which that was just... That might be, we'll have to see how that footage looks. I don't know, because I just had the camera sitting there, but that might actually be a kind of blooper video. But then in the afternoon on Monday, we did culling, and we have not the whole culling on video, but we did the tools you need to do the culling. So we kind of run through what you need to have on hand and our setup a little bit. We do have a culling video from last spring, so if you're interested in, start to end culling, I'll link that in there. And then, of course, we went foraging today, so we have foraging with Nobby, and that's going to be the last one of the season with her. So I'll have to edit that a bit as well. So we have 4 more videos to come. We'll see if I can get them all done by next week or not.
We have a new person.
And we have another new person in here. Breakaway Homesteader. Hi. Yes. So we were just wrapping up at this point because I know Alderman Farms has a live show starting right now. But we have a lot to come. So thanks for joining us. I don't know if you guys have any other questions for us before we wrap up tonight, but I'm going to wrap up here in a minute.
And I need to get on to, I got things to clean up and finish up grading some tests for tomorrow.
Yeah, you have a lot to do tonight. So, yeah. So, first time on. So I'm just going to say, we have a lot of stuff coming, 2 foraging videos, 2 chicken related videos.
There's rumor there's supposed to be a goose cooking something. We've had a request to do a big time goose cooking video and farm it out to another.
It was Tangi.
Tangi for their.
Tangi, the caver's wife, has a series that she wants to do, like a Thanksgiving holiday series.
Well, I think it's with the other
she has a channel. What is it? They have
a
frugal. I haven't watched it yet.
They have a huge following.
Or it might just be a list in her channel. I have to look it up.
No, they do.
It might be their own channel.
Yeah, it is.
A frugal food thing. So I have to look it up.
I don't know what it is. So we were told they have a huge following and was asked to do something. So we may do something with the goose. I got to get it done quickly. I got a time crunch with a lot of things going on. Want it pre-Thanksgiving, although it works for Christmas. So
yeah,
we may do a foraged goose cooking with some form of a local stuffing.
Yeah, the foraged and local stuffing with our goose that we culled this week.
And we might do a supplemental gravy making video, which everybody seems to have the most interest in. How do you make a proper sauce or gravy out of your poultry, which is not that difficult, but you need to be a little bit attentive, and so we may get 2 or 3 videos out of that and shoot them over to them.
Yeah, so that'll be coming up over probably over the next few weeks in November, and then we'll go from there. And yeah, so we have a lot of cooking video plans coming up, so I hope you guys enjoyed those. And please take a look at the last one if you haven't already. It's very simple, I think I could make it, and I don't cook. But the pasta carbonara was really good. So it was definitely fun chatting with everybody. I want to say have a good night to everyone. We'll see every Sunday. We're going to do this every Sunday at 8 p.m., whether or not Mike can join us for it. So thanks for joining us for most of it this time. Yeah, check it out, Coco Noel. I think it's the last video I put up, but I'll be putting up another one soon. So it's pasta carbonara cooking video.
We still owe a pumpkin. Still
a pumpkin video.
Still owe a pumpkin cooking video. I've got tons of sugar pumpkins to use. So
that could go into the whole holiday theme as well.
Yeah, that's a little easier. One takes a little less time because the goose there's a couple steps. It's a half a day.
We may just have to do 1 a week holiday theme all of November. Maybe we'll do something like that. Holiday cooking videos coming up. So have a great night. We'll see you guys next week if you want to join us. Thanks for coming along. Pine nuts. Go great with pumpkin seeds.
So do pumpkin seeds.
Pumpkin seeds, true.
But you got to shell them if they're good, and that's a pain in the butt. So go to the Mexican store and get the pre-shelled pepitos, and then you don't have to shell them.
If you have a Mexican store near you.
Everybody got a bodega near them.
Somewhere.
Pretty much everybody's got one. Just got to go find it.
Yeah.
They're called pepitos.
We're going to say goodnight. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching Part-Time Permies, you guys. Take care.